Ah, the Blossomus Blossomus. That's the sad thing. I want to know what happens next. Right then, Doctor, whoever I'm going to be, tag. You're it. It'd be cool if I did just actually change this then. That'd be pretty funny. Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I've finally done it. I have watched every single televised story of Doctor Who, as well as done a lot of Big Finish and novels and stuff like that. The conclusion! It finally, I did it. That's bad. Today we're going to be talking about, hello there, my name is McEdam. This is the Doctor Who Marathon. And today we are going to talk about the ultimate story of the 13th Doctor era. The Power of the Doctor, written by Chris Chibnall and is directed by Jamie Magda Stone. This sees the departure of both Dan, played by John Bishop, and Yaz, played by Mandip Gill, as well, of course, seeing not only the end of the 13th Doctor era, as played by Jodie Whittaker, but also the final story produced under the reign of Chris Chibnall, who only did the showrunner for the Jodie Whittaker episode era. And there is so much, there's so much in this story. This story was not only the conclusion of all that, but this story also serves as the 100th anniversary special to the BBC. This story aired on the 100th year of the BBC. It actually was around more October time, November time, but they've pushed it so that the story is on October. The story aired in October. As such, this story has a very anniversary special feel. It's actually one of the longest single episodes of the series. I can't remember if it ties or if it's just under the 5 Doctors, but it's a similar length, so it's basically a movie. It's one of the longest. I don't know if it's longer than Day of the Doctor. I'm not quite sure. But anyway, and it also features the Cybermen, with also as well featuring the Cybermasters, the Time Lord of variations of the Cybermen, as well as a Shard, who was previously killed in the Timeless Children, played by Patrick O'Neill. It sees the Daleks return, and it also sees Shasha Dhawan's return as the Master. Basically summarising the 13th Doctor era, showing much of her, the main 3 villains, but also much more entwined with their storylines and stuff, as well, dealing with the change renew. It also features the return of 2 classic companions. Janet Fielden returning as Tegan, the 5th Doctor companion, and probably everybody was the most excited for this, Sophie Aldred returning as Ace, the last classic Who companion. Oh my god! Oh my god! Just when I saw them in the trailer, the next time trailer, my head just exploded. But anyway, there's so much this story has to tackle with. When the story was being aired and being not being aired, but advertised, a lot of people, including myself, were really worried about the stagnation of the episode. This story had a lot to do. It had to deal with all of these departures, features all these returns, and it's supposed to be the 100th anniversary special. A lot of people had all of these concerns. A lot of people kind of presumed the story was going to be terrible, but hoped that at least it dealt with certain aspects of the story very well. That included myself, by the way. After Legends of the Sea Devils, the penultimate story, which didn't really hold up, and as well as Flux having a lot of episodes in Series 13 where episodes were cluttered together. So this episode had so much to deal with. It was ridiculous, and it was very... also as well, it's supposed to tie up a lot of loose ends leading into the 13th Doctor's stories. For example, we had the Fugitive Doctor, we had the whole Timeless Children. Though Chris Chibnall, to be fair to him, did admit whilst you watch this episode, don't expect all of the answers to be completed. Series 13 and the final era of the 13th Doctor was hindered by the fact that there was a mass pandemic. COVID hit and completely changed the plans of many of the Doctor Who stories that Chris Chibnall had worked on. And so that's kind of what the story kind of deals with. But anyway, let's actually get into the narrative of the story. The first half of this story sucks. No doubt about it. We get a really cool action scene, but where our time-traveling characters, they try to fight off a invasion of Cybermasters, going onto this hyperspace train, as they convert people. They take people on the train, whilst they also are trying to find a particular object on the train, seemingly someone in a casing, and it's up to the Doctor and the friends to try and figure out what's going on. Dan gets shot, and the shot nearly misses him, but it smashes his helmet. By the way, they have the classic orange spacesuits that have been worn, I believe, at every Doctor up to this point. So Jodie Whittaker's finally completed that legacy of wearing the orange spacesuit. Yeah. So that's absolutely mad to begin with. But basically, Dan has a near-death experience, and it starts to affect him. I do really like that shot where he takes off the helmet and you just see him kind of pondering this, as Yaz and the Doctor just talking as if nothing's happened. This isn't just another adventure. And there's that great moment where after the Doctor basically frees everybody and saves everybody, Dan's on the system and he's being a air hostess, doing the ladies and gentlemen, you're all safe now, blah blah. That bit cracked me up. But the Doctor learns that what the Cybermen are after is that what they're actually tracking down is a little girl. And no, this is not the Timeless Child. And the Doctor's I will save you. And then she runs off, only for the Cybermen to be there's a great line. This episode has so many great lines. There's a great moment where the Doctor's I'm going to save you. And the Cyberman just turns to the child and is the Doctor lies. Great. I bloody love that moment. But they fail to save the child. The next scene is the Doctor taking Dan back home to have his date with the character from Flux, who I can't remember her name. But the juxtaposition, what? So the Doctor just abandoned that child, essentially. And Dan has decided that enough is enough. That I was at a near-death experience. I don't want to get through that again. I have something to live for. I have something to fight for down on Earth. And I feel staying home, that's what I need to be. It's an excellent shot. It's excellently written. However, getting Dan cut off so early on in the story just felt like a waste. It felt like an absolute waste. I understand that the story is juggled and is platted with a lot of stuff. But and as well as the way it's executed as well, how the Doctor fails to save a girl, they've all failed to save a child, no less. And then the next scene is just they treat it as if it was just another adventure that they've just done, and it's just oh, okay, back to the normal day life. We're gonna take you back to normal Earth, and that kind of sucked. And Dan, you just technically just abandoned this child as well. This is very out character for all of our characters in this story. As Yaz says goodbye outside the TARDIS to Dan, the Doctor has an encounter of a hologram of a Dalek, who basically proclaims that he has betrayed the Daleks and he is going to give the Doctor vital information because the Daleks are about to invade Earth in a massive destructive event to do with volcanoes. Actually, I can't remember if they mentioned volcanoes at this point. But the way, it's soon after Yaz leaves the TARDIS, and then when she arrives, and the Doctor decides not to tell her for some reason. doesn't make a lick of sense. Also, we get introduced to our recurring classic companions. Some of the dialogue in the first half of the story is a bit clunky. When it's in the trailer where Tegan's just like, it's been nearly 4 decades for me. That's a terrible impression. And Ace is just like, show off just because it's only been 3 decades for me. That line was pretty sucky, and they have a little plot where essentially paintings have gone missing and archaeologists have gone missing. And they basically go into just trying to discover what's going on. We also then get cuts of 1913, where in Russia, the master is either impersonating or the story is implying that in the Doctor Who canon, the master is Rasputin, the famous, rah rah Rasputin lover, which is something we kind of all expected watching the trailers. At one point, he does dance to the song, which was mental to watch. But yeah, and like the whole subplot of our companions trying to learn all of this, that goes absolutely nowhere. It just brings them into the story, but it doesn't really lead up to anything. And the whole thing about the paintings, it turns out that the master has gone back in time and altered his face into the paintings. Why he did that, at least that's what I think is going on. Seeing as an incarnation, a version of the master's in the past. He's also in the present. The Doctor reunites with her companions. Great scene, by the way. The way they don't really have much to say at first. It's very awkward. Tegan just comes straight forward. It's just we used to be here. She's very angry. Ace is really chuffed that the Doctor's now in a female incarnation. It's it's a good look, Professor. When she says Professor, oh, that was so cool. But anyway, also Kate Stewart's also in the story. And when they get introduced, they basically sum up what's happening in the plot at the moment. Also, I forgot to mention, Tegan thinks she's got a message from the Doctor, which also includes what seemed to be a compressed Cyberman. I mean, that twist was pretty obvious what's going to happen. But anyway, they basically tell UNIT about these missing paintings and stuff. And the story seems to be setting up that storyline, that subject, as well as the Doctor having to deal with the Cybermen and the child in the background of the head, as well as the Dalek. All of a sudden, the footage just turns up of the Master just hello there, you're never going to find me, or I'm going to give myself away and stuff. I'm going to play with you, and the Doctor, don't get involved, or everyone you know will die, and you will also be absolutely disintegrated and stuff. And I get this really cool scene. It reminds me a lot of Missy. It reminds me a lot of the Michelle Gomez moment of the Master, where they take over the footage and they play around with it, almost presenting themselves to their heroes. So I like that element. But what was the point with the paintings? They could have just had a dilemma. The Doctor gets in there units under attack or something, and then to play the footage. We didn't need the whole painting thing. It just seemed like really strange setup, a very strange mystery for this storyline. However, after this point, this story gets so good. I mean, it's still incredibly cluttered. Do not get me wrong, and there's a lot of plot holes. There's a lot, and we will talk about them if I remember. But the story has its heart in the right place. Yaz tracks down the Master to a lecture where they go down and they see all the geologists all miniaturize, and the Master originally plays it he's actually giving a presentation until you realise what's going on. That bit gives me so much shit. And that bit where he's talking to the Doctor and it's this is the end for you, and I'm letting you know because I want you to react. And if you don't react, I'm going to kill people. But if you react, you're basically playing into my hands. And that bit where he goes up to Yaz and you could just see she's frozen with fear. because this is an incarnation who's so unstable. We've seen this he kills a lot of red shirts, and he also kills a shard in Spyfall and in Ascension of Cybermen and the Timeless Children, where he just like this is a trigger happy incarnation of the Master. This is a person who's just like the urge to kill is overwhelming, and Yaz can kind of feel it in this scene, and the Master is he just owns that bit. Like Sacha Dhawan and Jodie Whittaker, when she's really straight-faced here, that witty side of her is gone, especially when units surround the Master, and the Master just like plays along with it, and she basically tells the unit soldier to give Yaz a gun. This is no joke. This is serious. This is where it starts with the massive callbacks come in. There's a scene where the Master sees Tegan and Ace. The Master mentions Tegan's aunt, that's probably got the greatest laugh out of me personally. For those of you who don't know, in the story Logopolis, the introduction of Tegan and also the final story of the Fourth Doctor, the Master kills Tegan's aunt. That's basically how she got introduced into the story. But it's like 3 seconds. She's only in Logopolis for 3 seconds. So her to get mentioned in this is just so funny. I absolutely love it. It's probably my favourite scene in the entire story, personally. But anyway, and also Ace mentions that he was a cat person, which is obviously a reference to Survival, the final story in the classic era of Doctor Who. And essentially we get the classic storyline of a villain imprisoned, and he basically has played all the cards. He knows what's going on. He's basically letting them play into his hand, thinking that they are safe, thinking that they are secure. This is something that has been done really a lot quite recently in fiction, most noticeably in the first Avengers film with Loki, and also in the James Bond film Skyfall. Spyfall. That's really interesting. So it's a classic setup, but as far as I'm aware, Doctor Who itself hasn't actually done this kind of storyline before, from the top of my head. That's quite interesting that it's going in that direction. So the Doctor has to go and investigate what the Daleks are doing, because seemingly their plans are to do with their geology, and it's something to do with a volcano. I can't remember what the volcano is, and essentially she goes in. I can't remember. Yaz goes in with her, and Yaz hides in the corner as she tries to team up with this Dalek. Oh yeah, we get a scene where the Doctor's originally going to take Yaz out somewhere else, but Yaz forces her. It's no, you must tell me what's going on. I hate this silence. Which it's a great storyline. The idea of our hero, our Doctor, hiding secrets from the companion, and our companion's just getting frustrated with stuff, with the secrets, with the thing. But this secret just didn't make any sense to me. Why did she keep the Dalek the secret? I don't understand that. But anyway, they go and investigate the Daleks, whilst in Unit HQ, the Cybermen start attacking, as it's revealed that the compression eliminator also can expand a shard. It's actually a shard, the lone Cyberman from the Haunting of Ala Diodati, Ascension of Cybermen, and the Timeless Children. He's actually the strength that Tegan has. He stretched up, and there's this really strange moment where he opens up, and an army of cyber warriors come out, then followed by a clone of a shard. Now, a shard was killed in the Timeless Child, and a lot of people criticize that story for many reasons, but one small, something usually in the back of people's head is, why did they kill a shard? The shard was one of the coolest villains in the 13th Doctor era. He got killed so to see him return was really cool. He doesn't get a lot to do. This story does have a cluttering of villains. It's way too packed, and surely they should have picked one, either the Cybermen and the Daleks, and figure out what's going on. And essentially, like, the Siberium that's controlling the Master, he cloned a Shard, and the Shard just has this really, like, okay, Jamie Magna Stone has directed some of the best stories in Jodie Whittaker's era. I think watching this might be my favourite, like, in terms of that shot, which is made to look like a single shot where he's going around stomping, killing all of the soldiers in Unit HQ, was so cool. It's so cool. And then he frees the Master, and the Master just like... There. Also, I really love... Also, Sega Nakanola's music in here is so good. I love it when you hear a Shard's theme, which is played prominently in Haunting of Aladia Darty, a kind of stomping... Not stomping, but kind of like that... Boom... Like a kind of beat. Like hard-hitting beat to it. And then when the Master appears up, you hear the Master's theme, and it's just so delicately done. There's also a planet in 1912, sorry, or 1913, where the whole Rasputin thing is. The Doctor has learned, I can't remember how she learned it, but she learned that she basically learns there's a planet that's orbiting around Rasputin time. I can't remember, like, how she learns it. But anyway, yeah, so she goes to see the Dalek to pass on some information, who is betraying the Daleks, only for then the other Daleks to arrive. And this is like one of the great things about Chris Chibnall. He really gets the Doctor Who villains. In this story, the Daleks and the Cybermen are essentially henchmen. They are henchmen, and they are treated as such. And if this story was set during the Stephen Moffat era, they would have just been that. However, in the story, we do get these glimmers of their characterization. For example, in this scene, where it turned out, where the Doctor kind of presumed that this traitor Dalek was, could be like a ploy, it could be a spy, like, it could be lying to her, clearly. But no, it turned out it was an actual Dalek that portrayed the Dalek cause. Essentially, this Dalek came to the conclusion that the Daleks were created to protect the Khaled race. However, the Daleks are now being more recently been focusing on the preservation of just the pure Dalek race. As such, the reason for Daleks' existence is kind of false. Therefore, the Daleks are a false species, essentially. That's like the conclusion it comes with. It's so fascinating how it turns its head on the idea of the Doctor, of the Doctor Who villain, the Daleks, their fascism, but turns it in a way where it's against them. That's really cool, because this is actually a concept, a Dalek turning against other Daleks. It's actually a concept that's been done before. In fact, most recently, it was actually in the previous Regeneration story, Twice Upon a Time, where we saw the Dalek Rusty going around killing other Daleks. The only good Dalek, as it was called. I guess that's no longer the case. And the other Daleks, basically, they discovered this, and they decided to use this to get close to the Doctor. And there's a scene where they force this Dalek to open its casing, and they just absolutely obliterate it. There is no excuse in the Daleks' ideology for any alterations to their Grand Master philosophy of the Daleks being the pure and the only race that must survive and must conquer and destroy all other races. That's fascinating, and the fact that the story has this kind of focus element to the story is just... It's only a scene, don't get me wrong. Like, it's not like the story is all about the Daleks and their superiority complex. But the fact that the story does include a scene like that, despite the fact that they are just henchmen in the story, and also as well the Daleks' plan of drilling into the core of the planet and spouting all this volcanic... destroying the Earth like that is very classic Who Dalek story, especially like the 60s, where they would do stuff like that. But it turns out as well that the Daleks are actually working with the Master as they teleport the Doctor to Rasputin time, where it turns out that the Master has organised the Daleks and the Cybermen to reunite so they could all conquer the Doctor. Now, the Doctor fighting the Master and the Cybermen, teaming up, and something that we've seen multiple times before. Most noticeably, of course, in Ascension of Cybermen and The Timeless Children, but also Deep Water and Death in Heaven. I'm sure there's another story, but it's on the top. I fails to remember at the top of my head. Essentially, there's a lot of stories recently where the Master teams up, or at least is in a story with the Cybermen. The Doctor falls and once to World Enough in Time. Yeah, so that all happens. But actually the idea of the Master teaming up with the Daleks is very interesting in terms of the chronology of Doctor Who. And I feel like this actually was intentional. Because there is that scene where the Doctor questions like the Daleks teaming up with the Master. He couldn't have organised that, could he? Because we have seen the Master work with the Daleks before. Most recently in the story, The Magician's Apprentice and the Witch's Familiar. In that story, it ends on a sort of cliffhanger where the Missy incarnation basically turns around to the other Daleks and her last lines in that story is, "I have a clever idea." So this is a conclusion to that. It pays off that plot line. And also as well the idea of the hybrid that could be the Master and the Siberian, so he's half Cyberman, half Time Lord essentially. So Chris Chibnall just fixing all the problems of the Stephen Moffat era in terms of the chronology of the show. That's just which is really strange because the whole Timeless Children and stuff like that doesn't get a mention in this story. Well, it does. Very little, in a certain way. But anyway, this is when the story becomes good to phenomenal. As the Master basically plans to force regenerate the Doctor into the Master. Basically, essentially, putting the Doctor with the Master's personality and his traits and his into this Master's incarnation. This leads into Sacha Dhawan playing the Doctor. You didn't know how it went through my head. For those of you who don't know, I can't remember if I mentioned this in Spyfall. Sacha Dhawan was one of my picks to be the Doctor. After seeing him in the 50th anniversary special, Adventures in Space and Time. So to actually see him be, when he became the Master, it was like, that's really cool. He was one of my favourites to pick the Doctor, but the Master, oh hell, I'll take that. And then, the Doctor basically is in a world of her imagination. And she sees the Guardian of the Edge, a manifestation of previous incarnations, where we get David Bradley returning as the first incarnation of the Doctor. Oh, fans of Doctor Who, that is not all, as we get Peter Davison, Colin Baker, Sylvester McCoy, and Paul McGann. Though this scene doesn't actually have anything to do with the plot. The scene has the Doctors and the Guardian of the Edge, as it's called, a manifestation of the Doctor's past, to travel into this area in their mind where essentially their incarnation passes into a sort of afterlife where the new Doctor essentially is the main Doctor now, as the Master's taken over her body. And it's we got to hold in hope. And then the Doctor's just right, we need to have help from the outside. The Doctor, we later then see Yaz teaming up with a AI intelligence that the Doctor has created many years ago. It's just brought up out of nowhere. That the Doctor has been working on this. So it had nothing to actually do in this mind palace that she was. So plot-wise, it didn't make a lick of sense. And it had no real plot purpose in the story. But it's all the classic living Doctor Who that haven't appeared in the series yet. Peter Davison appeared in Time Crash, and Paul McGann appeared in Night of the Doctor, and David Bradley appeared in Twice Upon a Time. But that's beside the point. Forget about that. Because it was so cool to just see them all in, and they weren't de-aged. They were as aged as they are when they filmed these scenes. It's so refreshing. So I know that's really strange to say, but it's so refreshing to see how actors just aged up. So whilst this is going on, Ace teams up with Yaz, who has this idea as essentially. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention. Let's talk about Sacha Dhawan's Doctor. Essentially, like, this is an incarnation which has now the personality of the Master. Actually, I think that's what happens. Because the plot, it doesn't make much sense, because the Master, this Doctor, calls himself the Doctor. It's like, I am the Doctor now. He's just like really like threatening and stuff. But like in certain parts, he can't remember who certain people are. Which, like, if he's the Doctor, then surely he should have those memories. Though you could sign it up as post-regeneration stress. Something that happened to the 8th Doctor and other incarnations, which I can't remember like another reference, but the 8th Doctor especially had like memory, like, who am I kind of moments. But anyway, so yeah, like a lot of elements going on at this moment. Yaz chucks the Master out. The Master scenes, the Doctor Master scenes, Sacha Dhawan nails this incarnation. Like, certain scenes in the Master in the story, like I said with the whole Rasputin thing, certain scenes like in this story, though he's still really good and he's so really captivating. A lot of people complained in the story, and I do see it in a few scenes where he plays the Master really cheesy, like really over the top. He's really just having a ball, which means he's very enjoyable to watch, but like it is sometimes like a bit too much. But when he's the Doctor, he has this slow enjoyment about everything. That scene where Yaz sees him for the first time, and he's like holding his collar like he's the first Doctor, but he's got like this grin, like he's so excited to see thing. And also there's a lot of references to previous incarnations. He dresses up in like new clothes, or should I say old clothes, as he dresses up in the sweater, and he has the stick of salary. It's like, and the David Tennant's tie. Really cool to see. But it's not much about this part of the story, because Yaz kicks him out quite early on, as she teams up with Ace, who jumps off the building or unit to try and escape. But Tegan decides to stay in to help Kate, as you know, she knows how to fight Cybermen. She's fight Cybermen before. So they get separated, but she gets reunited with Yaz, as well as Vinder's in this story. Why? He appears and does absolutely nothing. There is no reason to have Vinder in this story. Especially when you set up the fact that Yaz has a gun. Why? What was the point of Vinder in this story? This is something like he was teased in the story. He was teased in like the advertisement, but like, why was he in here? He added nothing. Like, here's one of the big criticisms of the story. Vinder was just there. I feel really bad for the actor, but like, there was no point for him being in her story, and he just took away for a really engaging story at this moment. But then, at this moment, so our characters are split away. The Doctor's hologram is talking to Yaz, and he also explains that this electric shock that she's given around to other characters has passed on this AI intelligence to these other characters. This is probably my favourite scene in the story, where Tegan interacts with an AI intelligence version of the Doctor that appears in his 5th incarnation. Janet Fielding Peter Davison reunite. And the scene where she's just like, you have no idea how I feel. A building full of Cybermen. You don't know what's going through my head. And he's like, I know exactly what's going through your head. Adric. And they kind of have this somber moment where it's like, it kind of hits like how the death of Adric from Earthshock really hit hard. And it was so powerful to see and so cool. But easily the better of the two is with Ace when she gets to interact with an AI intelligence of the 7th Doctor, Sylvester McCoy and Sophie Aldred, reappearing on screen for the first time since Survival, and it just broke my heart. Like, the way basically the scene sets up is that she first talks to the 13th AI, and she's basically saying it's just like, right, you can use explosives, and she's just like, Ace is just like, yeah, I'm not allowed to use explosives, but you are. Same old Doctor, you know, double standards. And then, like, you hear the 7th Doctor's voice, and, like, they have this, like, really sweet moment. And it has easily my favourite line of the story. All children must leave home soon or later. The joy is to watch them fly. I can't even begin to tell you how much I cried in that scene. I cried so hard. I cried so hard. So, also, Yaz was like, right, I've got this energy now to fight the Daleks with Nitro 9, her famous explosive. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, Bradley Walsh as Graham O'Brien reprises his role. This is something which was kind of leaked prior to the airing of the story. It was never actually officially confirmed. However, it was leaked like months and months before. And it's like, he does nothing in the plot. His interactions with the 13th Doctor are so minimal. What was the point of having him in here? But yeah, and essentially they have like this plan where Yaz finds the Master, takes them back to 1312, wherever Rasputin is. I've completely blanked it out of my head now. And essentially gets Vinda to hold him at gunpoint. Like, again, we didn't need that. Yaz has a gun. And like the scenes where like okay, essentially in the scene they set up the Master, the incarnation of the Doctor is okay. I'm okay now with killing everybody and taking over the world. I think anyway, or at least, or like maybe the Masters make more control now of this incarnation. When all of a sudden Joe Martin returns as the fugitive Doctor. Or at least the AI takes advantage of it, makes the Cybermen all shoot each other, and this regenerative energy that the Cybermasters have are put into this machine that reverses the regeneration, and makes the Shasha Dhawan Master regenerate into Jodie Whittaker again. And then there's so much to talk about. There's so much. Let's start wrapping up. The Doctor starts like wrapping up all these plot lines. She's got this planet that's made for mass cyber conversion in the past, and in the present time has the Daleks destroying all these volcanoes. She comes up with a quick solution. She teams up with everybody to essentially do the same thing in Journey's End, where all the companions control the TARDIS so they can trap a planet through space, in this case through time, and they use the conversion planet to shoot a conversion beam into the lava, turning it into a alloy. I think it was steel, metal. It was some sort of metal anyway. Basically solving two birds with one stone. Where then she is confronted with the Master on this planet, I've completely forgot about the child. Turns out she's not actually a child. It's a AI system of a massive protective. Yeah, I can't remember why they needed the child. Something to do with the energy source needed to that regeneration process. The Master wanted the Force regenerate the Doctor. And the Master's body is basically starting to decay, but he finds his energy to get back to his TARDIS, which is on the planet. And they have basically their last encounter with the Doctor and the Master. But the Master, it's really strange. He uses his compression, and the beam of the child / protective AI system shoots at the Doctor as Yaz picks her up and takes her off the planet as the beam thing destroys the planet, seemingly with the Master on it. But you see the thing escape, so the Master could escape on the child, which would be a really funny image. All the companions go away, but the Doctor, being hit at that blast, activates another regeneration. And so it starts to come to the end. And how the story deals with regeneration is so well handled. When rewatching the story, you can clearly tell there's this theme of change and dealing with it. With a lot of aspects of the story is about like how you don't really usually get the endings you want. With Tegan and Ace coming back, they had Doctor moments where like they didn't get the ending. Ace literally didn't get an ending. The series was cancelled before she had time to leave, and when the series came back, she was nowhere to be seen. And Tegan, in her last story, was just like, it seemed like their world was surrounded by death. So like, it was not like they didn't end on essentially good terms. And the story is basically just saying, you don't get the way to regenerate the change the way you want to. Because there's a great moment when the Doctor realizes, he's like, I need more time. I want more time. But it's okay. Because you might not like the change. But you got to live those moments with those people. Nobody else had that experience. And maybe, just thinking about that, you can enter that sunset with a smile on your face. As she says goodbye to Yaz. Yaz then has this really strange moment where she reunites with Dan and Graham, who takes them to like a small little session that features previous companions, including Bonnie Lanford as Melody Bush, Kate Manning as Joe Grant or Joe Jones, but obviously the big one, the one that everyone's thinking about, the one that everyone talks about, is William Russell returning as Ian Chesterton, the first companion. You can't believe how much I cried at that scene. I love like the editing of these scenes with the Doctor alone in her TARDIS, basically getting ready to essentially regenerate and die, as we hear the 13th Doctor theme playing throughout. Like, Sega Nakanola's score is so great. As Yaz basically accepts that, like, she is just in a line, like, of people that had to leave go with the Doctor but on the bright side, they didn't have the same experience as her. They didn't see the world through her eyes, through these moments, these experiences. There's also a really great shot. Probably one of my favourite Jamie Magnus Stone's shots in the story. Is when Yaz and the Doctor are sitting on top of the TARDIS having ice cream together. Their last outing together. So good. So good. As the Doctor says her final moments, and that quirkiness of her, the tag, "You're it," last line. That just sums up the 13th Doctor so well. As she looks out into the sunset and she regenerates to the theme of 13, Sega Nakanola's theme for the 13th Doctor. Ooh, doo, 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 doo. Just so good. It's so good. And that is the end, essentially, of Power of the Doctor. As the story ends on a cliffhanger, of the next Doctor. As suddenly the clothes starting to change, the jacket becomes blue and a much more fabric material. We have like a waistcoat and a tie. And instead of Ncuti Gatwa, which was confirmed to be the 14th Doctor, we get the return of David Tennant, who previously played the 10th Doctor in like the series. Just like, obviously this is a massive moment that like everyone talks about in this story. And it's just so mad. It's just so mad. We'll talk about more about my feelings and my and what I think about this aspect when we get onto his episodes as the 14th Doctor. But to see him here and the way he's like it's shot and those references, like it's like I recognise his teeth, a callback to Partner of the Waves, as well as like him going what, just too mind blown. And that is Power of the Doctor. Overall, I think this video is an absolute mess. My video anyway. Which is funny because I think the story itself is an absolute mess. There's so much fluff in the story. Why is the Master Rasputin? What was the point of the paintings at the start? What was the point of Venda? What was the point of Graham? I forgot to mention, like, there's so much I forgot to mention. I forgot to mention about how Kate Stewart and dealing with the Cybermen in a unit base. Yeah, there's so much. I do apologise. This video is a mess. This video is already long as it is, but the story was. There's a lot of mess, and like I said, the first half of this story sucks. The first third of the story sucks. Just downright sucks. However, when it gets good, it gets really good with some really great callbacks, really great fangasm moments, with Classic and Companions finally getting the outings of their doctors that they deserved, essentially, and the storyline of the Doctor, the Master, the Daleks, the Cybermen, and Yaz, just. And it's all under a theme. This is what I think, that even though the story is a mess, there's so much fluff in this story. There's so much stuff that just didn't need to be here. There's a scene where the Doctor Master, the Sacha Dhawan's Doctor, goes to the future to see a planet be destroyed, where he takes claim of the destruction of these planets, which is, I believe, one of them is Earth. It's a very strange scene. I don't know why that scene is in there. But the story just has this underlying theme about not just change, but the change that you might not want it because it's too soon. Like you don't get the ending you deserve. And that kind of is a meta reference, a meta point to the series. This might not even have been the ending that Chris Chibnall intended with the whole stuff with the pandemic. Maybe he did have more plans to handle the Timeless Children and Joe Martin's Doctor. Maybe he did have more plans about how the Doctor was going to deal with Graham's cancer. But things change. Things are beyond your control. And you start regenerating. But when you learn that you might have your ups, you might have your downs, but at least you are the one experiencing it. You're never going to live this life again. You're never going to have a Jodie Whittaker Doctor again like this. Like, you've only got one Jodie Whittaker Doctor. You've only got one Chris Chibnall era. You've only got one Yaz, played by Mandip Gill. So just embrace it whilst you can, and hopefully you can regenerate with a smile on your face. And the story is like, it's plattered with that theme in the story. And I think because of that, because of the underlying theme, despite the story doing so much, so much, the good moments make this story phenomenal. And it is probably one of my favourite stories of the Jodie Whittaker era. I'm not saying it's my favourite. There, obviously, Any of her pseudo historical stories are my favourite, like Nikola Tesla's Knights of Terror, Demons of the Punjab, and Rosa. But this story's up there. And with that, we say goodbye to the 13th Doctor. And as time of recording this is the last Doctor Who story. We have finished the marathon, guys. I've done it. I'm going completely mad. So you'll just have to wait until November, where we will see David Tennant, Catherine Tate, Wilfred, and Donna's mother all reprising their roles. As we get Russell T Davies back as showrunner. And also as well, a really, really cool classic logo. It's all so cool. It's all so cool. And yeah, that's it. That's it. So join me next time where we find out what is going on. How is the Doctor regenerated back into the 10th body? And who is the mysterious villain played by Neil Patrick Harris? And how is Donna not head exploding with all this information? So join me next time for that. And thanks for watching this mad marathon series with me. It's ended. I have no idea what I'm going to do with my life. Ta-da.